The automatic doors at JFK's Terminal 4 slid open with a cold metallic sigh, and the world outside rushed in. Jet fuel, winter air, and the faint scent of burnt Starbucks espresso drifting from the kiosk behind us. 7-year-old Mason clutched my hand tighter, his small fingers freezing inside his worn blue gloves. "Mom, do you think Dad will be happy we came early?" he asked, his eyes bright with hope, the kind that still believed families stayed together just because love was supposed to mean something. I forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. He'll be thrilled." The lies scraped my throat like gravel. Announcements echoed overhead. Gate changes, delays, passengers running past with rolling suitcases. I checked the time on my cracked iPhone screen. Brandon's flight from San Diego had landed 10 minutes ago. Any moment now, he'd walk through those sliding doors, pretending he hadn't ignored my calls for 3 straight days. I smoothed my thrift store coat, trying to shake off the dread gripping my spine. I told myself Brandon was just stressed at work, that the CFO of Prescott & Sons Logistics didn't always have time for family. But deep down, I had felt the shift months ago, the distance, the coldness, the quiet cruelty he thought I didn't notice. Then Mason gasped, "Mom, there he is!" My heart jumped. I followed Mason's gaze, and the world tilted. Brandon emerged from the crowd, suitcase in hand, with a woman clinging to his arm. She was stunning in that polished Manhattan way, long camel coat, glossy waves brushing against the collar, a silver Dior handbag swinging at her wrist. She laughed at something he whispered, leaning her head on his shoulder like she had every right to, as if she belonged there, as if I never had. My breath strangled in my chest. Mason stepped forward, his voice a small, excited call that sliced through the terminal. "Daddy!" Brandon froze. The woman, Lana, though I didn't know her name yet, stiffened and slipped her arm away like she'd been caught stealing. Brandon's face drained of color as Mason ran toward him, backpack bouncing. I didn't move. I couldn't. People had stopped walking. Some pretended not to watch. Others didn't bother. Brandon bent down, hugging Mason with an awkward stiffness that twisted my stomach. "Hey, buddy, I didn't know you and Mom were coming." Before I could speak, Mason looked up, innocent and curious. "Daddy, why was that lady holding your arm like Mommy does?" The question punched through the entire terminal, clean, sharp, impossible to escape. Brandon's eyes widened, Lana paled, the whispers started, and in that suspended, airless second, the life I had protected, endured, and sacrificed for began to crack straight down the middle. And then something happened that none of us were ready for. For a moment, time didn't move. Brandon stood frozen, Mason's innocent question hanging in the air like a live wire, sparking in every direction. Passengers slowed, curiosity blooming on their faces, as if they had accidentally stepped into the middle of a primetime scandal. Lana recovered first. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sweetheart," she cooed too softly for my liking, "I'm just a friend." Mason blinked. But friends don't hold Daddy like that. The entire terminal seemed to exhale at once. Brandon cleared his throat, shifting his weight, eyes darting around as if searching for an exit. "Mason, hey, bud, why don't we, get your backpack zipped up properly? It's about to fall open." His voice trembled beneath the forced calm. I finally stepped forward. My boots echoed on the polished floor, each step peeling away the thin layer of denial I'd been suffocating under for months. "Don't change the subject, Brandon." He straightened, jaw tightening. It was the same expression he wore whenever he was backed into a corner, defensive, sharp, dangerous. "Hannah, this isn't the place." "No," I said, keeping my voice steady though my throat burned. "You're right. The place should have been our home, not a terminal filled with strangers." Lana shrank behind him, but her eyes, those calculating hazel eyes, flicked over me with thinly veiled contempt. She wasn't embarrassed. She was annoyed the moment wasn't going the way she planned. Mason tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, Did Daddy do something bad? My heart cracked. I knelt down, brushing a finger along his cheek. Honey, Daddy just made a mistake, a big one. Above us, Brandon flinched as if the words had weight. When I rose to my feet, something inside me had shifted. The woman who walked into this terminal hoping to save a marriage had died the moment I saw that other woman clinging to my husband. Brandon reached for my arm. Hannah, let's talk. Alone. Not a chance, I replied. Not anymore. His eyes hardened, cold, irritated, almost cruel. You're being dramatic. And you, I whispered, are being revealed. Around us, the murmurs grew louder. Then, from behind, someone stepped closer. A deep voice said quietly, Ma'am, is everything all right here? I turned and saw the last person I ever expected to witness the fall of my marriage. The man standing behind us wasn't airport security like I first assumed. He looked too composed, too sharply dressed for that. Charcoal wool coat, tailored suit, a Mont Blanc pen clipped neatly inside his lapel. His presence alone shifted the air around us, like Manhattan executives carried their own atmosphere. Brandon stiffened, Lana's face drained of color. Mason peeked at him from behind my coat. The stranger offered a calm, polite nod. I noticed raised voices. Is everything all right, ma'am? His voice carried the steady authority of someone who rarely hears the word no. I swallowed, caught between humiliation and relief. We're fine. Thank you. Brandon jumped in, voice sharp. This is a private family matter. You don't need to involve yourself. The man raised an eyebrow, slow, unimpressed. I didn't ask you. A small ripple of satisfaction warmed my chest. Brandon bristled. Do you know who I am? Do you? The man replied, almost bored. The surrounding onlookers snickered. Brandon's ears turned red. Before the argument could escalate, Mason tugged my hand again. Mommy, can we go home? I don't like this. I leaned down to him. Soon, sweetheart. When I turned back, the stranger had shifted his attention to me entirely, softening his tone. If you or your son need assistance, I'm right here. Brandon scoffed. Save the chivalry. She doesn't need help. The man's gaze sharpened. It doesn't look that way from here. For the first time since the nightmare started, I felt seen. Brandon stepped forward until their faces were inches apart. Back off, the stranger didn't blink. If I were you, Mr. Prescott, I'd lower my voice. Brandon froze, recognition blazing in his eyes. You're Evan Caldwell. My blood ran cold. Caldwell. As in Caldwell Maritime. Prescott and Son's largest rival, a man whose name made boardrooms sit up straighter, and he had seen everything. Evan offered me a small, respectful nod before turning back to Brandon. You really should treat your wife with more dignity. Lana tried pulling Brandon toward the exit. Let's just go, but Evan cut her off, voice low and edged with ice. Miss Sterling, I strongly suggest you don't involve yourself further. You've already done enough. She paled. Passengers watched with open fascination. Brandon's humiliation was complete. Then Evan gently placed a business card into my hand. For when you need someone in your corner. Our fingers didn't touch, but the gesture struck like a spark. Brandon lunged as if to snatch the card away. But that was the moment Mason said something that made the entire terminal fall silent again. Mason's small voice rose between us, soft but piercing enough to slice through the chaos. Daddy, why are you yelling at that man for helping Mommy? You never help her. Brandon froze. The terminal went dead quiet. Even the rolling suitcase behind us halted mid-stride as its owner stopped to listen. Lana stiffened, her glossy lips parting in disbelief, and Evan, stoic, composed, glanced down at Mason with a fleeting look of sympathy. Brandon's jaw clenched. Mason, that's not... But Mason wasn't finished. His voice trembled, but he stood straighter, braver than any 7-year-old should ever have to be. And why didn't you smile at Mommy? He swallowed hard. You always smile at her. He pointed straight at Lana. My heart shattered. Brandon paled, the words hitting him harder than any punch. Lana instinctively stepped back as if the truth might stain her coat. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd once more, this time heavier, judgmental. Buddy, Brandon said tightly, you don't understand what's happening. Yes, I do, Mason whispered, tears pooling in his eyes. Mommy cries when you're not home. I hear her. His voice cracked. I don't like when she cries. I pressed a hand to my mouth, fighting back the sob that clawed its way up. My sweet boy, my brave, innocent boy, had carried that pain alone. Evan took a small step forward, positioning himself subtly between me and Brandon, not intimidating but protective. Children see more than adults give them credit for. Brandon snapped, "Stay out of this!" But the damage was done. His image, the successful, in-control CFO, crumbled right there on the polished airport floor. Lana tugged his sleeve, whispering harshly, "Brandon, people are filming. We need to go." I hadn't noticed at first, but she was right. Several phones were raised, recording, capturing every word Mason had said. Brandon's eyes darted around in panic. "This is being taken out of context. Hannah, tell them." Tell them? Tell strangers my son was wrong to expose the truth? I straightened, wiping Mason's tears with my thumb. I'm done covering for you. The words were quiet, final. Lana hissed under her breath. I told you this would blow up if you didn't handle it. Brandon shot her a warning glare. Not now. But she was already pulling away, distancing herself as if trying to erase the traces of scandal clinging to her. Before he could say another word, Mason tugged my sleeve again. Mommy, can we please go home? I nodded, but as I turned to leave, Evan Caldwell's voice stopped me. Mrs. Prescott, you shouldn't go home with him tonight. Brandon's head snapped toward Evan like a cornered animal. What the hell is that supposed to mean? He demanded, voice rising, panic sharpening its edges. Evan didn't flinch. It means exactly what I said. Then he looked at me. Really looked, the way someone does when they recognize pain you're trying desperately to hide. Mrs. Prescott, your safety and your son's well-being come first. The sincerity in his tone pulled the breath from my lungs. Brandon scoffed. Don't listen to him, Hannah. He doesn't know anything about our family. Our family? I whispered. You walked off a plane holding another woman. A few bystanders murmured in agreement. Lana subtly stepped away again, clearly wanting no connection to Brandon's unraveling image. Mason pressed himself against my side, fingers gripping my coat. Mommy, I don't want to go home with Daddy if he makes you cry again. Brandon winced. Guilt or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. Hannah, stop this. You're blowing things out of proportion. I turned, meeting his eyes. Brandon, you changed the locks last month. Remember that? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Or how about the fact that you've been working late every night for the last 4 weeks? Or how our joint account suddenly drained itself? Evan's gaze sharpened at that. Quietly, he said, That sounds like financial isolation. Brandon rounded on him. Shut up, you don't know anything about... Actually, Evan cut in, I know more than you think. He slid his hands into his coat pockets with the calm confidence of a man who held all the cards. Prescott & Sons Logistics has been making questionable financial moves lately. Rumors travel fast in Manhattan. Brandon's face lost what little color remained. This wasn't just humiliation anymore. This was fear. Let's go, Lana whispered urgently, grabbing Brandon's sleeve. Before this gets worse. But Brandon shook her off. I'm talking to my wife. Your ex-wife, someone in the crowd muttered. I swallowed hard. Brandon, Mason, and I are going home. But not with you, not tonight. Not until I figure out what's real and what's a lie. He reached for me instinctively, but Evan stepped subtly forward, placing himself between us, not touching, just forming a quiet barrier of authority. "Walk away, Prescott," Evan said softly. "This isn't your moment anymore." Brandon's hands curled into fists. "Hannah, if you leave with him—" "I'm leaving with my son," I said. "Everything else is on you." I took Mason's hand and turned toward the exit. But before we could take 2 steps, I felt a shadow at my back. And when I turned, it wasn't Brandon following us. It was Lana. I turned slowly, expecting another insult, another smug smile, another knife aimed at the pieces of my already broken heart. But Lana looked terrified. Her flawless lipstick trembled. Her eyes darted between Brandon and Evan, then back to me. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "Hannah," she whispered, "you need to get your son out of here. Now." I stiffened. "Why would you care?" She swallowed hard. "Because Brandon isn't just cheating, he's spiraling. And when he spirals, he gets dangerous." A chill moved down my spine. Behind me, I felt Evan subtly shift, his presence a silent shield. Mason squeezed my hand, sensing the tension. "Mommy, who is she?" Before I could answer, Brandon barked from several feet away. "Lana, get over here." Every muscle in her body tightened. "I shouldn't have said anything," she muttered. "Just go, please." She turned away, but her hand brushed mine for the briefest second, shaking, pleading. Something was very wrong. I took Mason's hand and stepped away from the scene, my pulse pounding. But Brandon wasn't finished. He stormed toward us, ignoring the glances and raised phones, ignoring the humiliation, ignoring everything but the unraveling rage twisting his features. "Hannah, don't walk away from me," he shouted. His voice cracked through the terminal like thunder. Mason flinched. I felt him tremble. That alone ignited something fierce inside my chest, something protective, maternal, unshakable. Evan stepped forward immediately. "Mr. Prescott, I'd strongly advise you to lower your voice." "Stay out of this," Brandon roared. "She's my wife." "Not tonight," Evan replied calmly, "and not like this." Brandon lunged a step closer, and for a split second, I genuinely didn't know what he might do. That's when 2 TSA officers approached, hands resting near their belts. "Sir, we need you to step back," one of them said firmly. Brandon blinked, stunned. "She's my wife. This is a misunderstanding." But even his excuses were losing shape. Passengers were staring. Cameras were rolling. His reputation, the one he worshipped more than our family, was disintegrating in real time. Lana, watching from the side, wrapped her arms around herself. Her voice shook as she murmured, I told him this would happen." And then she said something that shot ice straight through my spine. "You don't know the half of what he's hiding." I froze. "What is that supposed to mean?" I demanded quietly. She looked at me, regret, fear, and something like pity flickering in her eyes. "Hannah, he didn't just cheat on you," she whispered. "He used you." Evan's eyes narrowed. The TSA officers glanced at one another, and Brandon suddenly went very, very still. The moment Lana said those words, the floor under me tilted, as if the whole terminal had quietly shifted. "Used me?" The phrase clawed at my chest like icy fingers. Brandon reacted first. "Lana, shut your mouth." But something inside her had cracked open. Guilt, fear, maybe exhaustion from keeping too many secrets. She shook her head, stepping back from him. "No, I'm done protecting you," she whispered. "You dragged me into this mess. You promised I'd be safe." "Safe?" Evan's brows lifted in quiet suspicion. "Safe from what, exactly?" Brandon shot him a venomous glare. "This is none of your business." But the cameras were still rolling. People were still watching. And Lana, she wasn't finished. "He told me he needed you, Hannah," she said, eyes locking onto mine. Not because he loved you, because your clean record, your credit, your name, he needed it to hide things he was doing through the company. A ringing started in my ears. Brandon snarled, "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," Lana said, voice rising now. "You made me send the emails. You made me forge those invoices in Hannah's name. You said nobody would check." The TSA officer straightened. Evan's expression hardened. And Brandon, his mask cracked entirely. My knees weakened. "Invoices? In my name?" Brandon stepped toward me, desperate now. "Hannah, listen, please. None of this is—" "Don't," I whispered. "Just don't." For months, the late-night meetings, the secrecy, the drained bank accounts, they all had explanations he fed me like crumbs. And like a fool drowning in hope, I ate them because I wanted our family to survive. But now, the truth was a blade. "I never wanted to hurt you," Brandon insisted, voice unraveling. I needed time to fix things before anyone found out." "Found out what?" Evan asked, his voice sharp as glass. "What exactly have you been doing with company funds?" Brandon's mouth snapped shut. That was the tell. The confirmation. Mason, sensing the rising panic, wrapped his arms around my waist. "Mommy, are we in trouble?" I smoothed his hair. "No, baby, we're not." But Brandon was. Very much. Lana hugged her coat tighter. "You think I wanted to get involved? He said his wife was too stupid to notice. He said she'd sign anything." My breath froze. Brandon lunged forward, pure rage contorting his face. "You traitor!" The TSA officers moved instantly, blocking him. Evan took one step toward me, his voice low, steady, lethal. "Mrs. Prescott, you need to leave with your son right now. This is no longer a domestic issue." And for the first time that night, Brandon realized he had lost control. The TSA officers formed a physical barrier between Brandon and everyone else, hands raised, firm but controlled. His face contorted, anger, fear, humiliation melting together into something unrecognizable. I had seen this man speak confidently in boardrooms. I had seen him charm clients over dinner. But this version, the desperate, cornered one, was a stranger. "Hannah!" Brandon shouted, trying to push past the officers. "Don't you leave with him. Don't walk away from me." His voice cracked so loudly that Mason flinched and buried his face against my stomach. That was it. The last thread snapped. "I'm not leaving with him," I said softly to my son. "I'm leaving for us." Evan stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that I felt the calm strength in his presence. "Follow me. I'll get you somewhere safe." Brandon exploded. "Safe? She doesn't need you. She's my wife." "You used her name on fraudulent documents," Evan replied coolly. "She's not your anything anymore." The bystanders gasped, a collective intake of breath, the moment a scandal becomes irreversible. Lana backed away, shaking her head. "I told you it would crash, Brandon. I told you." Brandon whirled toward her, fury unleashed. "You ruined everything. But before he could finish, the TSA officer grabbed his arm. "Sir, step aside or we'll restrain you." Brandon yanked his arm away, chest heaving. He looked feral. I reached for Mason's backpack, adjusting the strap over his small shoulders. "Come on, baby, hold Mommy's hand tight." His fingers curled into mine instantly. Evan guided us toward the exit, his tall frame shield-like, intercepting curious stares, forming a quiet path through the chaos. The automatic doors opened, letting in the cold night air and the neon glow of taxis lined up outside. But just as we stepped into the open space, Mason looked up at me. "Mommy-o, is Daddy going to jail?" My heart twisted. "I don't know, sweetheart, but whatever happens, it's not your fault. Do you hear me?" He nodded slowly, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. Evan leaned down slightly, his voice low and unexpectedly gentle. "You're brave, Mason. You protected your mom tonight." Mason blinked up at him, surprised. No one had ever said that to him, not even Brandon. Behind us, Brandon roared something incoherent, drowned out by the closing doors. TSA voices followed, firmer, more urgent. When the doors sealed shut, it felt symbolic, like a line had been drawn, like the life I once had was locked behind us. But as I exhaled, shaking, Evan spoke words that made my heart stop. Hannah, there's something you need to know before tonight goes any further. The cold night air outside JFK wrapped around us, sharp and clean, a stark contrast to the chaos we'd just escaped. Evan guided us toward a quieter area near the taxi lane, where headlights blurred into long streaks across the pavement. Mason held my hand tightly, his small fingers still trembling. I turned to Evan. What do you mean? Something I need to know. He exhaled slowly, like someone preparing to break news no one wants to hear. I didn't want to say anything back there, but now that you and your son are away from him, you deserve the truth. My stomach tightened. Just tell me. Evan looked straight into my eyes, steady, unflinching. Brandon didn't just use your name on forged invoices. He used it to move money into an offshore account, a very large sum. My breath hitched. What? No, he wouldn't. He would, Evan said gently. And he did. Those documents Lana mentioned, they weren't small. They were part of a pattern. For a moment, all I heard was the sound of passing traffic, the distant honk of cabs, the wind tugging at Mason's hood. My life felt like someone had grabbed it from the seams and ripped it wide open. So, what does that mean for me? I whispered. It means, Evan said quietly, that if everything comes to light, and it will, you could be implicated unless you protect yourself now. A tremor ran through me. I didn't know anything about it. That's why I'm telling you. His jaw tightened. Because Brandon will throw you under the bus to save himself, and his company, they won't hesitate to let you take the fall. I staggered back a step. Oh my God. Mason tugged my coat. Mommy, are you okay? I forced a smile through the rising panic. Mommy's okay, sweetheart, I promise. Evan crouched down to Mason's level, tone warm. Your mom is very strong, and she's going to be just fine. I'll make sure of that. Mason nodded, trusting him instantly. When Evan rose, his expression shifted, more serious, more urgent. Hannah listened to me carefully. Brandon is not the only one who knows about those accounts. I blinked. What do you mean? Evan's voice dropped to a near whisper. There's someone else watching him, someone who doesn't want the truth coming out, and they know your name is on those documents too. A shiver crawled down my spine. Who? Evan looked toward the terminal doors, scanning the crowd as if expecting someone to emerge. When he spoke again, his voice was a quiet warning. The investigation has already started. The word investigation hit me like a physical blow. The wind outside JFK suddenly felt colder, sharper, slicing through my coat. My mind ran through every moment of the past year. Brandon's late nights, his sudden business trips, his tight grip on our finances, the paperwork he always insisted on handling himself. And now, my name was on something criminal. My pulse hammered. Evan, what kind of investigation? He didn't sugarcoat it. Federal financial crimes. They've been monitoring Brandon's department for months. My legs weakened. Oh God. Evan stepped closer, lowering his voice. You need to listen carefully. If Brandon realizes the feds are closing in, he'll panic. And when he panics, he'll do whatever it takes to protect himself. Even if that means sacrificing me, I whispered. Yes. His answer was immediate, firm. That's why you cannot go back home. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not until you secure legal counsel. Mason looked up, worried again. Mommy, do we not have a home anymore? I crouched, pulling him into my arms. We do, sweetheart. But for tonight, Mommy just needs to make sure we're safe. He nodded, trusting me the way children always trust their parents, blindly, painfully, beautifully. When I stood again, Evan had already pulled out his phone. I know someone who can help, an attorney who specializes in situations like this. She's discreet, fast, and very good at protecting victims of financial abuse. Victims. The word sat heavily on my tongue. Brandon had convinced me for years that I was just overreacting, too sensitive, not good with numbers. But now, those were weapons, tools to keep me controlled. Evan continued, "She'll meet you tonight at the Peninsula Hotel. I'll have a room set up for you and Mason." I blinked. "Evan, I can't afford—" "You're not paying for anything," he said simply. "This is protection, not charity." I hesitated. Letting a stranger help me felt dangerous, but staying near Brandon felt deadly. Before I could answer, the terminal doors slid open again, and Brandon burst outside, breath wild, security trailing behind him. "Hannah!" he shouted. "You're not leaving with him!" I flinched. Mason grabbed my coat, terrified. Evan stepped in front of us, his tone suddenly cold enough to freeze steel. "Brandon," he warned, "take one more step toward them, and I swear." But Brandon didn't stop, and what happened next would shatter the night in a way none of us were prepared for. Brandon charged toward us like a man who had finally lost control of every part of his life and was determined to drag someone down with him. Security followed close behind, calling out warnings, but he didn't hear them. He didn't hear anything except his own unraveling. "Hannah, you're not leaving with him," he roared, spit flying, eyes wild. Mason clung to my coat so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Mommy, it's okay," I whispered, though my voice trembled. Evan stepped forward, one arm slightly extended in front of me and Mason, a quiet gesture of protection that felt steadier than anything I'd known in years. "Brandon," he warned, tone low, dangerous. "Stop where you are." But Brandon didn't. He kept coming. Then something happened. Something so fast the world seemed to split in two. Brandon lunged, not at Evan, at me. His hand shot out, fingers curled, reaching for my arm like he meant to yank me backward. But before he could touch me, Evan grabbed his wrist in a single, clean movement. Precise, controlled, effortless. "Don't," Evan said. Just one word that froze Brandon mid-swing. Security rushed in, shoving themselves between the men, forcing Brandon backward. He thrashed, furious, humiliated. "Get your hands off me. She's my wife," Brandon shouted. One officer replied sharply, "Sir, you need to calm down or you will be detained." But Brandon wasn't listening, his face twisted into something hateful. "You think she wants you?" he spat at Evan. "She's nothing. She's always been nothing." Something in me cracked, but not the way he intended. His words didn't break me. They freed me. Evan, meanwhile, didn't flinch. His stare was cold steel. "You're talking to the mother of your child," he said, "and the woman you tried to frame." The officer stiffened. Lana, standing behind the crowd, covered her mouth with shaking fingers. Brandon froze, realizing every eye was on him, every word recorded. "You can't prove anything," he hissed. "That's the part you should be worried about," Evan replied, "because others already can." Brandon's face went chalk white. The officer nearest him touched his earpiece. "Sir, we've just been informed federal agents want to speak with you immediately." The crowd gasped. Brandon staggered. "What?" I felt Mason lean into me, his voice tiny. "Mommy, what's happening?" I exhaled shakily. "Sweetheart, the truth is finally catching up." Brandon tried to step toward us again, but this time security grabbed him. And for the first time in years, he wasn't in control anymore. The moment the TSA officer mentioned federal agents, something inside Brandon snapped. His shoulders slumped, his bravado evaporated, and the wild fury twisting his features drained into something far more unsettling. Fear. Real fear. "Federal what?" he whispered, voice cracking. The officer repeated calmly, "Sir, FBI agents are waiting inside the terminal. You need to come with us for questioning." For a split second, I almost didn't recognize the man staring back at them. This wasn't the powerful CFO with tailored suits and a perfect smile. This was someone cornered by a truth he could no longer outrun. But as security took his arm, he twisted in their grip and glared at me with venom. "This is your fault, Hannah." His words sliced through the cold night air, sharp and desperate. Mason flinched. "Mommy, why is he mad at you?" I held my son close, heart heavy yet strangely steady, because people get angry when their lies stop working. Evan took a step forward, tone clipped but restrained. "Prescott, I suggest you stop talking. Anything you say now—" "Oh, shut up," Brandon snapped. "You've always wanted to destroy me, and now you're using my wife to do it." Evan blinked once, slow and unimpressed. "Trust me, Brandon. You destroyed yourself." Security tightened their grip and began escorting him toward the building. But just before they reached the doors, another figure emerged. Dark suit, badge clipped to his belt, expression grim. The FBI agent. He flipped open a folder. "Brandon Prescott, we have questions regarding financial irregularities, offshore transfers, and the misuse of a secondary signer identity." Secondary signer identity. My chest squeezed. My name. Brandon's eyes flicked to me, wild, desperate. "Hannah, tell them. Tell them you knew." The agent looked at me, calm but curious. "Ma'am, we may need to speak with you as well." A cold wave rolled through me. Evan stepped in before I could panic. "Agent, she's a victim of financial abuse and identity manipulation. She'll fully cooperate, but not tonight, and not without legal representation." The agent studied Evan for a moment. Recognition flickered. "Mr. Caldwell." Evan nodded. "I'll arrange her attorney." Brandon thrashed again. "You're helping her. She's the reason—" But his voice was cut off as the agent took his arm. "Mr. Prescott, this way." Then, right there in front of us, Brandon Prescott was escorted inside, handcuffed. The crowd whispered. Someone whispered, "Karma." Another murmured, "He deserves it." But while everyone watched him fall, I felt something shift behind me, a presence. When I turned, Lana was standing there again, eyes red, mascara smudged, hands shaking. "Hannah," she whispered, "there's more you need to know." Lana stood under the harsh glow of the airport lights, mascara streaked like war paint across her cheeks. For the first time since I'd seen her wrapped around Brandon, she didn't look powerful or smug or composed. She looked broken. "Hannah," she whispered, voice cracking. "I didn't know it would go this far. I swear I didn't." I held Mason close, my pulse pounding. "What else are you hiding?" She glanced over her shoulder as if expecting someone to be listening, then stepped closer. Evan moved subtly to my side, keeping a protective distance between us. Lana swallowed hard. "Brandon wasn't just using your name. He was planning to disappear with the money, a full clean break, new identity, offshore accounts, everything." My breath caught. "Disappear? When?" "Soon," she whispered. "Maybe days." The ground under me seemed to shift. "And what about us? Me and my son?" Her eyes filled again. He said once he left the country, you'd take the fall. You'd have no choice." A cold wave crashed over me. Evan's jaw tightened. Prescott was planning to leave the U.S. and let Hannah face federal charges? "Yes," Lana whispered. "He said she'd be fine. Women like her blend in," he said. Blend in, forgettable, disposable. My stomach twisted. "And the worst part?" Lana added shakily. "He didn't plan to take Mason either." My knees almost buckled. "He said kids complicate things," she whispered. "He didn't want to risk slowing down the escape." A strangled sound escaped my throat. I clutched Mason tighter, feeling his warm cheek press into my coat, blissfully unaware of how close we had come to losing everything. Evan exhaled sharply, a controlled, icy release of fury. "You should have come forward sooner." "You think I don't know that?" Lana snapped, wiping her face. "I was scared, okay? Brandon promised he'd protect me. I didn't realize he was building a trap big enough to swallow all of us." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then Lana pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat. Her hands trembled as she held it out to me. "This is why they're really investigating him," she whispered, "and why you're in more danger than you think." Evan reached to take the paper, but she shook her head. "No," she said softly. "She needs to see it first." My fingers closed around the paper. I unfolded it, and my vision blurred as I saw my own signature at the bottom of a document I had never seen before, a document worth $3.2 million. The paper trembled in my hands as I unfolded it completely. Under the harsh glow of the overhead street lamp, the numbers glared back at me like a cruel joke. $3,200,000. There's a transfer authorization, signed by me, except I had never seen it before in my life. My throat tightened. This isn't real. "Hannah," Lana whispered. "He forged it. He forged everything. He used your signature as the backup signer. That document is what the federal investigation is circling around." My heartbeat hammered in my ears. "If the FBI thinks I signed this..." Evan answered for her, voice low and precise. "Then you're the one they'll try to charge. Brandon made sure of that." The truth hit like a punch to the ribs. I staggered, and Evan's hand instinctively steadied my elbow, not possessive, just supportive, grounding me so I didn't fall. "He planned to disappear," Evan continued, jaw hardening, "and he planned to leave you holding the legal consequences." I felt sick. How could he do that to the mother of his child? Lana shook her head. "Hannah, you think he cares about anyone but himself? He told me once, loyalty is for people with nothing to lose. He thinks he's above everyone." Mason tugged my coat gently. "Mommy, why are you crying?" I wiped the tears quickly. "Oh, sweetheart, Mommy's just scared, but everything's going to be okay." Evan crouched down beside Mason. "Your mom is one of the strongest people I've ever seen, and I won't let anything happen to either of you. I promise." Mason nodded, trusting him completely, and I felt something shift inside me, a tiny spark of hope in the rubble. I looked at the signature again, the looped letters, the slanted tail. It looked eerily close to mine, nearly perfect. "You said earlier Brandon made you forge things?" I asked Lana. She nodded. "Then why didn't he make you sign this?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Because this one had to look perfect. He traced your signature from old documents." Cold nausea washed over me. "And there's worse," she added. "This is only one of 3 transfers, all using your name." My breath caught. 3? Evan stood slowly, eyes burning with fury. "That means the federal case isn't just about him anymore. It's about tying all 3 transfers to Hannah." The world seemed to spin. Lana hugged herself behind her coat. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am. I tried to warn him to stop, but he said you'd never fight back." I inhaled shakily, feeling something sharp and fierce rising where fear used to be. "Well," I said quietly, folding the paper with trembling fingers, "he's about to learn he was wrong." The shock of the forged documents still pulsed through my veins, but beneath it, something new flickered alive. Not fear, not grief, something sharper. Resolve. Evan watched me carefully, as if weighing whether I would break or rise. Maybe even he didn't know which direction I would go. "I need to go to the hotel," I said finally, folding the fraudulent transfer authorization with deliberate calm. "I need to meet your attorney." Evan nodded once. "I'll have a car brought around." Lana shifted awkwardly, hugging her coat tighter. "Hannah, before you leave, there's something else." My spine stiffened. "More?" She hesitated. Brandon kept a backup, a physical copy of everything. Fake signatures, transaction histories, offshore account details. My breath caught. "Where?" "In his office at the company," she whispered. Evan exhaled sharply. If federal agents get to that before Hannah's attorney does, she loses her chance to prove she was coerced. "So what do?" I asked. "You don't do anything," Evan said. I will. Lana's eyes widened. You're going to break into Prescott and Sons headquarters? Not break in, Evan corrected. Request access as an interested party in the investigation. I blinked. You can do that? Yes, he said simply. Brandon brought federal attention on himself. That makes his competitors relevant. It hit me then. This world Brandon lived in, the world of corporate warfare and power plays, was one I had never belonged to. But Evan did. And he wasn't just offering help. He was stepping into battle on my behalf. A taxi honked nearby. Cold air bit at my cheeks. Mason leaned against me, tired, confused, but safe. Safe because I'd chosen to walk away. Lana, I said, turning to her, why tell me all this? Why now? Tears welled in her eyes again. Because I thought I was the one he cared about. I thought he'd protect me. But tonight, when everything crashed, he told me I was nothing but a pawn, too. A sad, bitter laugh escaped her. Turns out, we were both just placeholders. I stared at her, a strange mix of pity and anger swirling inside me. She was part of the destruction, but she was also trapped in the fallout. Go home, Lana, Evan said. Get a lawyer, and stay away from Brandon. She nodded, backing away into the night. Evan faced me again, voice steady. Hannah, you're no longer running. You're fighting now, and you won't be fighting alone. I inhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting inch by inch. Then let's start, I whispered, before he takes anything else from me. The car Evan ordered arrived within minutes, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that swallowed you into safety the moment the doors closed. Mason curled up beside me, exhausted, his head resting on my lap. The city glowed outside, Manhattan's skyline glittering like 1,000 tiny promises I wasn't sure I deserved. Evan sat across from us, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, Prescott and Sons headquarters. I want access to the executive floor by morning. No, I don't care what strings you have to pull. Make it happen. Even without hearing the other side of the conversation, I could feel the power in his voice. Controlled, lethal, unwavering. Everything Brandon pretended to be, Evan actually was. When he hung up, he turned to me. Your attorney will meet you at the hotel in an hour. Her name is Victoria Hale. The name rang a faint bell. Isn't she one of the best in New York? His tone left no room for doubt. The SUV glided to a stop outside the Peninsula Hotel. Golden lights shimmered across the entrance, reflecting off polished marble and the revolving doors. It looked like a place meant for people who lived in a different world than I ever had. I can't stay here, I whispered, suddenly self-conscious of my thrift store coat and scuffed boots. I don't belong in a place like this. Evan stepped out first, then offered me a hand, not to pull, not to guide, just to steady. You belong anywhere safety exists, he said quietly. My breath caught. Inside, the lobby was warm and glowing, filled with soft music and the scent of fresh lilies. Mason stirred, rubbing his eyes. Mommy, is this a castle? The question broke something soft in me. I brushed his hair gently. Something like that, sweetheart. The front desk had already been notified. Within minutes, we were escorted up to a suite so elegant it felt like stepping into a dream. Cream-colored walls, velvet chairs, a view of Fifth Avenue sparkling below us. Mason ran to the window. Mommy, look, the cars look tiny. I managed a weak laugh. Evan stood by the door, watching us with an expression I couldn't read. You'll be safe here tonight. Don't open the door for anyone except Victoria Hale. I nodded. Evan, thank you for everything. He held my gaze for a long moment. Brandon underestimated the wrong person, Hannah. Tomorrow we start proving it. His words settled over me like armor. But before the elevator doors closed behind him, he added one more thing. Something that sent a strange shiver through my chest. And Hannah, you're stronger than you've ever been allowed to believe. Victoria Hale arrived exactly 1 hour later, just as Evan had promised. The knock on the suite door was firm, measured, nothing like Brandon's pounding earlier at the airport. I peeked through the peephole. A tall woman in a tailored navy coat, hair sleek, posture sharp as a blade. I opened the door. "Hannah Prescott?" she asked. "Yes." She stepped inside without hesitation, eyes sweeping the room with the practiced caution of someone who had seen the worst in people and learned never to be surprised by anything. Mason sat on the sofa holding his tablet. Victoria softened just a fraction. "Hey there, I'm just here to help your mom." Then she turned back to me, professional mask snapping back on. "Mr. Caldwell briefed me on the situation," she said, laying a leather folder on the table. "I'm going to need you to start from the very beginning, every detail, no matter how small." I sat across from her, nerves buzzing. Should I wake my son? He heard a lot of what happened. "No," she said immediately. "Children should not be pulled into federal cases unless absolutely necessary." Her decisiveness steadied me. I took a breath and began recounting the events, from Brandon's distant behavior, to the sudden financial changes, to the confrontation at JFK. Victoria wrote everything down with rapid precision. Then I handed her the forged $3.2 million transfer document. She read it in silence. When she finally looked up, her expression had shifted, something between frustration and anger. "This signature is an extremely good forgery. Whoever traced it knew exactly what they were doing." "That's what Lana said," I whispered. "Lana?" Victoria's eyebrows lifted. "The mistress came forward?" I nodded. Victoria leaned back, processing. "That's highly unusual. Mistresses rarely turn against the man financing their lifestyle, unless something serious changed." "Oh, it changed," I said quietly. "Brandon told her she was disposable." Victoria shook her head. "Men like him always believe they're invincible, but forging a spouse's signature on federal documents? That's prison time." My stomach twisted. "What about me? Am I a suspect?" "Yes," she answered plainly, then added, "but not for long." I blinked. "How can you be so sure?" Victoria tapped the document, "Because whoever forged this made a mistake, a small one, but fatal." "What mistake?" She turned the paper around and pointed. "The signature matches yours perfectly, except for one detail." My pulse raced. "What detail?" Victoria looked me dead in the eye. "This isn't your handwriting style from the last 5 years. It's your handwriting from 10 years ago." A chill ripped through me. "How could Brandon know what my signature looked like 10 years ago?" I whispered. Victoria's answer made my blood run cold. "Hannah, the signature wasn't traced from your marriage documents." She paused, letting the truth settle like a stone sinking into water. "It was traced from a form you signed when you first met Brandon." For a moment, the room felt soundless. No traffic outside, no distant hum of elevators, no soft breathing from Mason drifting into sleep. Just stillness, heavy, suffocating. I stared at Victoria. "A form from when we first met? That's impossible. I didn't sign anything important back then." Victoria shook her head slowly. "You'd be surprised what counts as important when someone's planning long-term fraud." Evan, who had been leaning quietly against the counter, straightened. "Explain." Victoria turned the document toward herself again. "The curve of the angle of the double N. The slant of the tail on the T. This is Hannah's handwriting, yes, but not recent. It's from when she was about 23. My chest tightened. "How can you even tell?" "When someone signs documents regularly," she said, "their style evolves. Strokes change, pressure changes, muscle memory shifts. Forgers mess up when they copy outdated signatures." "But how would Brandon even have something from that long ago?" I asked, voice cracking. Her answer came without hesitation. "Because he saved something from the beginning." I shook my head. "But we didn't meet through work. He wasn't in my classes. I didn't sign anything for him." Evan's gaze darkened. Hannah, think back. The very first time he ever asked you to sign something, even something small. My mind raced backwards through the years. Coffee dates, walks through Brooklyn, a road trip early in our relationship, renting bikes in Central Park, waivers, forms, receipts. Then it hit me. Oh my God, I whispered, hand flying to my mouth. The apartment application. Victoria nodded sharply. Exactly. Your handwriting from that lease is the closest match to this forged signature. My knees nearly buckled. He saved that? For what? 10 years? Evan's voice dropped, colder than steel. Because Brandon planned this long before you realized he was capable of it. A tremor ran down my spine. No, he wouldn't have. He would, Victoria said gently but firmly. This wasn't an impulsive crime. He built a safety net, a backup plan, and he used the younger version of your signature to make it look clean. The reality landed like a hammer. Brandon hadn't just betrayed me recently. He had planned the possibility of betraying me from the start. From the moment he smiled, touched my hand, kissed me under the Brooklyn Bridge. He already had a plan, and I had walked willingly into it. My voice shook. Why would he do something like this? Victoria exhaled. Because you were useful and naive and trusting. But that's not the worst part, she added quietly. My stomach twisted. There's worse? She folded her hands together, eyes meeting mine with grim sincerity. Hannah, the signature wasn't the only thing he saved. I stared at Victoria, my pulse pounding in my ears. What else did he save? She exhaled slowly, as if choosing her words with surgical precision. Hannah, it wasn't just your signature Brandon kept. He kept records of everything about you. Everything. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Records? Like what? Evan stepped closer, sensing the shift. Victoria. She opened her folder, pulling out several printed screenshots. Photos of your driver's license, your social security number, your old bank statements, even emails from before you were married. My breath hitched. That can't be real. She laid them out on the coffee table like pieces of a crime scene. It is real. He kept a digital archive labeled Backup H. Backup H. Backup Hannah. My stomach churned. What was he planning to do with all that? Whatever kept him safe, Victoria said quietly. He could have used this to open accounts in your name, take loans, transfer more money, even create a false trail to make you look complicit. Mason whimpered in his sleep on the sofa, and I gently covered him with a blanket. Seeing his small chest rise and fall, peaceful, trusting, only made the truth more devastating. I looked at Victoria again. He was going to throw me under the bus. No, she corrected softly. He was going to bury you under it. The room spun. Evan clenched his jaw, fury sharpening every line of his face. This is premeditated fraud on a level even I underestimated. Victoria nodded. And it gets worse. My knees nearly gave out. Worse than that? She pulled out one last document, a printed email. The sender name froze my blood. Brandon Prescott. Subject contingency plan if she gets suspicious. Victoria slid it toward me. This email was recovered by internal auditors 2 days ago. It was flagged because Brandon used his work account. The feds already have a copy. My eyes raced across the text. Each sentence tightened like a noose. If Hannah ever starts asking questions, initiate Plan B, divert responsibility. She lacks the resources to fight. She will comply out of fear. If necessary, leverage custody of the child. My lungs collapsed. Custody. Leveraging Mason, using my son as a weapon. A sound crawled out of my throat. Not a sob, not a gasp, but something raw and primal. Evan's hand curled slowly into a fist. He was willing to use your child to silence you. Victoria nodded grimly. And that is why you're not just a victim in this case. You're the key witness. Witness, not suspect, not disposable. A witness. A spark flickered in my chest, the same spark that had survived humiliation, betrayal, fear, and years of manipulation. "Then let him burn," I whispered, "for everything he tried to take from me." The next 48 hours moved like a storm, fast, violent, and unstoppable. Victoria worked through the night, gathering evidence, building the case, coordinating with federal agents. Evan moved just as powerfully from his side, pulling strings inside corporate circles, ensuring the truth couldn't be buried under money or influence. By Monday morning, everything was ready. And that was how I found myself standing outside the glass tower of Prescott & Sons headquarters, Mason's small hand in mine, Victoria and 2 federal agents flanking us like guards. Inside, the boardroom buzzed with murmurs as executives filled their seats. Evan stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, radiating a calm authority that silenced the room without a word. Brandon was brought in last, wrists cuffed, suit wrinkled, eyes wild. The room gasped. He froze when he saw me. "Hannah?" His voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" Victoria stepped forward. "Witness testimony." Brandon's chest heaved. No, Hannah, please, listen. We can fix this. We can still be a family." The audacity almost knocked the breath from me. "I'm here so our son grows up knowing his mother didn't let a coward ruin her life," I said quietly. His face crumpled. "You don't understand." "No," I cut in, voice steady. "You don't understand. You used me. You forged my name. You planned to abandon your own child." Gasps rippled across the room. Brandon jerked toward the board. "She's lying, Evan cleared his throat just once, and the room fell silent. He opened a folder. Inside were the forged documents. Every transfer, every fake signature, every incriminating email. And then he spoke, voice calm but lethal. Mr. Prescott attempted to defraud his own company by funneling millions through accounts created under his wife's identity. He also attempted to frame her. The evidence is overwhelming. Brandon lunged forward, desperate. "You're doing this because you want her. You think she'll choose you?" Evan didn't blink. "This isn't about me. This is about what you did." The agent stepped closer. Brandon's voice broke. "Hannah, please." I took a slow breath, every wound, every humiliation, every sleepless night rising like a tide behind my words. "You taught me to fear you," I said, "but you also taught me something else. How to survive you." The lead agent nodded. "Brandon Prescott, you are under arrest." The handcuffs clicked shut. For the first time in years, I felt air fill my lungs fully, freely. Mason slipped his hand into mine. "Mommy, are we safe now?" I knelt, kissing his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe." Behind me, Evan's voice softened. "Hannah, it's over. You won." I turned to him, a new light blooming in the ashes of my old life. Maybe it wasn't just safety waiting for me now. Maybe it was something more. And just like that, our story closes, my wonderful friends. If you're still here with me right now, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a way only truth can. And maybe, just maybe, it reminded you of something you've survived yourself. Life has a way of testing us through people who break us, but also through moments that rebuild us. The ancient Stoics believed that the obstacle is the way. And Hannah's story proved exactly that. What tried to destroy her ended up shaping her strength. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And sometimes, when the storm finally passes, we realize we were stronger than we ever knew. If this story reminded you of your own courage, your own healing, or your own quiet battles, then I'm grateful you stayed. Truly. And now, if you want to keep walking with us through more stories that heal, reveal, and empower, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who might need it tonight, and subscribe to our channel. You're not alone here. We're in this together, one story at a time.